This week, reverse analyzing attacks for detection with Justin Henderson from SANS. There's a lot of SANS on the previous show and this show. Eric Conrad from SANS joins us as a special guest in studio. And the security news this week, Microsoft should just STFU. Auditing is not fuzzing. Ghost hooking. No Honda for you today. The not-so-average cost of a breach. Chromebook security features, the RNC files, and Girl Scouts. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Brought to you by the SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer security certification training and research. Visit sans.org to explore their full curriculum and latest training offerings. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Onapsis is the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business-critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce to you my good friend, confidant, compatriot, Steve Jobs. No, I'm Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. Very, very happy to be here.
Is that what that smell is?
I'm excited about the whole show, Larry. Larry's here in studio. Welcome, Larry.
Yay!
Very nice. Mr. Eric Conrad is in studio. Eric, welcome to our wonderful studio.
Thanks for having me.
My office was actually cleaning because I got a new desk yesterday, so Eric got to see the one time this year it'll actually be clean.
As far as I know, it's always like that. It's awesome.
That's right. Let's see, on the lines via Skype, Mr. Jeff Mann is here. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, everybody. Good to see y'all.
Good to see you, Jeff. Mr. Joff Thayer, certified SANS instructor.
Yes.
Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us.
Woo! Speech.
G'day. Gentlemen, stole my thunder. But yes, certified SANS instructor as of today. Very happy to be at the other end of that process.
You're certifiably an instructor in a number of other things as well.
Yeah, that's just true.
Quick announcement before we get into it. Okay, so we're doing the Eric interview first, then we're doing a technical segment. I read them in reverse order. Quick announcement, ITEPro.tv's courses now include Computer Hacking, Forensic Investigator V9, Kali Linux, CompTIA A+ 901, and Accelerated CompTIA Security Plus. Premium annual memberships include all video content, as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. You'd normally pay $85.70 a month or $570 per year, but for a limited time, get 30% off monthly memberships for the lifetime of your active subscription using the code SW30. Now, I would like to introduce the one and the only Eric Conrad, who began his career in 1991 as a UNIX systems administrator for a small oceanographic, did I say that right? Oceanographic communications company. He gained information security experience in a variety of industries, including research, education, power, internet, and healthcare. He is now the CTO of Backshore Communications, company focused on hunt teaming, intrusion detection, incident handling, and penetration testing. He is a graduate of SANS Technology Institute with a Master's of Science degree in Information Security Engineering. In addition to his ASSP, we won't hold that against him, he holds the prestigious GIAC Security Expert GSE certification, which in Security Week history, we've had 2 shows in a row. We've had a GX certified security expert, a GX security expert on the show.
2 tonight, Justin Henderson.
2 tonight.
2 tonight.
That's a
Double up.
triple header.
Doubling up.
What's going on, Eric? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. What are we talking about today? I don't know. They just said Eric's coming down. I'm like, sure.
All right, sure. Well, I was told half of it's going to be cyber defense net wars and building challenges, making blue team challenges sexy. And the other half was how to be a SANS instructor, very timely, given that Joff was promoted to SANS Certified Instructor today. So I'd like to think I had some small part in that because Conrad's talking about Joff. So being a SANS Certified Instructor, we better promote the guy. It's embarrassing if we don't. So I'm going to take some credit.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah. I did nothing, but it was just
But claim credit for it.
I did.
Good.
Thank you.
So let's talk about cyber defense exercises.
Sure.
For blue teams,
Yes.
specifically.
Yep.
Do a lot of enterprises partake in such things?
Well, they're fairly new. We've been looking at these net wars challenges. We saw a bunch of challenges built. I saw Jim Shoemaker do some cool stuff years ago. Of course, Ed Scotus and his band of ninja elves at CounterHack have done amazing stuff. But it seems like almost all the CTFs were either pen testing or forensics, and they get all the cool, sexy stuff. And the blue team, which is the vast majority of infosec, got none of that cool stuff. We didn't have coins. We didn't have those challenges. And what ended up happening is a lot of blue team, folks play red team challenges, and hey, that's fun too. But as we've been saying for years now to SANS, we're bringing the sexy back to blue team. Why don't we have? There's no reason technically why we don't have this stuff. The vast majority of infosec people are blue teamers, so let's build some stuff. So we built a number of blue team challenges, initially for Security 511, which is Seth Meyers', I know he's been on the show, myself's class. And
now, is this part of Ed Scotus's initiatives as well, or is it
it's separate? Well, our curriculum, the blue team curriculum of SANS is separate from Ed's, but we're using net wars for these challenges. Of course, Ed built net wars. And so net wars is basically a scoring engine, a framework around capture the flag challenges.
So net wars is the framework.
Net wars is it's just a scoring engine. And so we built the initial ones for Security 511, which is continuous monitoring, a class Seth and I wrote. And then at SANS, you have these 2-night challenges with 3 hours of challenges each night, and they're playing music, and there's food, there's beverages, and a big room of 300 people. Like, we want that for blue team. So we built Cyber Defense Net Wars. It launched stealth mode in Orlando this year. We ran it in SecWest. It runs next at SANS Fire in June, I believe, or July. It's coming up, time's a blur. And it's been awesome. We had 50 people in the room. Really, we had about 70 people in the room. I was capped at 50 in San Diego at SecWest. But we had 20 extra people show up. We're like, sure, come on in. And it's been awesome.
So what kind of things do they encounter?
Sure. So Cyber Defense Net Wars, the metaphor, the story is you're a defender on the wall. This is a Game of Thrones theme. You're recruiting the Night's Watch. You're defending the wall. And you're defending the wall. Initially, level 1 is just you're securing the wall, the firewalls, things like that. Level 2, the humans attack the wildlings. Level 3, the undead attack the whites. And level 4, you have to catch the dreaded Night King, who's the king of all of that. And no one's actually found the Night King yet. The Night King has to be hunted down. And of all the times we ran it, and all the testers who went through it, we talk about GSEs, but a bunch of GSEs tested before we went live. No students found it, and only one tester found the Night King. And that was Justin Henderson, who follows me in about an hour now. He found the Night King. He's the only one so far.
Wow.
So Justin, no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. Spoiler alert.
So are there attackers and defenders when they come in, or are they only defenders? And
it's defenders. The attacks have already happened. So you've got a bunch of Windows event logs, you get PCAPs, you get log files, and you're hunting through that for signs of attack. Initially, level 1, we built it, Ed has said this before, I think he said it on the show, Ed Scotus, it's easy to build a really easy challenge. It's easy to build a really hard challenge.
Yes.
But the middle, where someone like a 301 or 401 student, 301 being kind of the on-ramp in a SANS, 401 being security essentials broad, And we want those people to have a ton of fun. But we want someone who lives in a SOC and does command, either PowerShell or Python all day long. We want them to be challenged too. And so having that middle ground,
really
it's
hard.
tough. It's challenging. And say it's Windows event logs, PCAPs, log files. There's Stego, there's crypto, there's general security stuff. And we had a bunch of 401 students take it who loved it, and a bunch of very advanced students. Again, only one student figured the whole game out, and that was Justin Henderson, and he's a ninja.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what do they get, like a VM? They
get a VM. There's a scoring engine. I basically stood up a Windows Active Directory domain for a few weeks in my office. I registered nightfort.org. If you know the story, one of the other castles on the wall. Castle Black is featured in the story, the HBO series and the books. I read the books originally. And you're defending the Night Fort, which is actually the largest and one of the oldest castles on the wall. And there's a domain, nightfort.org. There's a bunch of, there's telnet attacks, telnet honeypot. There's SSH attacks. There's all kind of stuff going on. And we give them just mountains of data, gigabytes and gigabytes. Full packet capture is running for weeks, and they're going to sort through all that stuff, just like you would in a
Linux VM.
A Linux VM based on
a bunch of Windows logs and
a bunch of Windows logs, exactly. And they're going to sift through full packet capture. And it's interesting to see students struggle with that. One of the comments we get in San Diego was, you should chop these PCAP files down smaller because I can't handle this. Well, guess what? Security Onion captures 150 megs at a shot. And when you hit 150 megs in a full packet capture, it rolls to the next one. And that's what you're getting. And you need to figure that out. This is real stuff.
This is stuff that you would be using in your environment.
Exactly. This is actual live data. Now, it's play data. It was in my office, but we Active Directory domain. And if you run full packet capture on a live network, that thing's going 24/7 with just nothing and noise and Windows systems, net bias. It's just constant stuff in a network. And then once in a while, the attack rolls in. They're going to hunt that thing down and find it.
Yeah, certainly they could carve up the PCAP file themselves.
They could, but
you're encouraging.
Exactly, but they struggle, just like we all struggle. That's what we all do. You start diving into real data. Real data's strange. There's tons of it. It's 99.99% just benign noise, and that's that 0.1 or 0.001% of the signal. And you see students struggling with that, but that's the real struggle we all face at our jobs. If you're defending.
Right. What are some strategies for hunt teaming in this particular scenario, Eric?
So we give broad guidance, like it's characters from the show, and one of the scenarios is a ransomware scenario. And I lit up real ransomware in my lab, and I had to just encrypt all the things and do all the stuff ransomware does, and it's phoning home to some weird DGA domain generation algorithm domains. And I'll say, Benjamin Stark did it again. He clicked on an email at 13:13 on February 12th. Go. And then answer these questions.
So they get some general direction.
For the Night King, they get nothing. For the Night King, find the Night King. That's all they get.
That's all they get. I got
and it's somewhere in the data you've been looking at for the past 6 hours. Somewhere in that, all the gigabytes of data is the Night King. But initially, at 13:13, Benjamin Stark clicked on an email, and he said, he got a weird pop-up, go. And they chase it down. Just like if someone called the help desk and say, hey, my PC slowed down, I got blue screened, or my desktop got crypto locked, whatever. You'd start from there hunting,
So we call those injects, right?
Sure.
And that's great. And I recommend when people do that, because sometimes people say, well, how do I do some kind of exercise, even if it's an incident response tabletop exercise?
Right, sure.
And when you explain to them the concept of injects, they're like, oh,
sure.
Wow. That's really, I think, what ties everything together and gives the students a path and purpose and looking for the next, what's Eric going to tell us to go find what's the next clue,
Sure. Sure. The other thing we have is we have hints. So level 1 and 2 have full hints, meaning the second hint is, the third hint is how to get the answer. Not the answer itself, but the commands to type to get the answer. Level 3 is one hint, which is a nudge, and level 4, the Night King's got nothing. And what you see as students, and the hints are free but serve as a tiebreaker, because in the end, we hand out 10 coins, Cyber Defense Net Wars coins, which in my opinion and others is the best looking coin in all of SANS.
It is. I don't know about the best, but they're pretty darn sexy looking.
It's a sexy coin.
Yeah.
And we hand out 10 coins in the end, 5 for the individual winners and 5 for the team winners. And so levels 1, 2, full hints, and hints are free because we want students to walk away knowing more than they walked in. It's easy as a newbie to walk into a challenge and get very little and get frustrated, walk away. We want them having a good time and walking away knowing more about hunting and blue teaming than they walked in with. So level 1's to a full hints are free except they serve as a tiebreaker. If Larry took 10 hints and someone next to him took 20, Larry would win if they had a tie score. Level 3 is 1 hint, and level 4, no hints. And what you see is the 301, 401 style students ends up using up all the hints.
Right.
And there's a hint strategy, too, because there's a time element, too. I mean, the only time a hint matters is if you tie. And time, you get 6 hours, basically. So I'd be hinting, knowing even what I know, I'd be hinting, because what are the odds if you score pretty high, you'll be tied. We've never had a tie decide a game yet. So as a game kind of theory strategy thing, I'd be taking hints because that would save you time on level 3, 4 when the whole thing's going to slow down.
And you get no hints at level 4.
Nothing on level 4. Yep, you're on your own.
That's awesome.
I have one comment though. The automating infosec with Python challenge coin is much sexier.
Oh my God.
You're entitled to your opinion,
well,
Geoff, even though you're wrong. Yes,
Now,
that's
see, if
fine.
I had either one of those, I could give a good analysis of both, but I don't have either. So you guys will have to work on that.
Consider it done.
See what I did there?
I did. It worked, too. I was just social engineered right there, live demo.
That's awesome. So when is this running next?
It's running at SANS Fire, and I'm a bad SANS instructor because most of us live one day at a time, and I know what's happening tomorrow, and maybe a little bit next week, that's it. So SANS Fire, which is in July, I think.
End of July.
End of July.
It overlaps with DEF CON.
Very conveniently overlaps with DEF CON, but they capped it at 100. There's already, I think, 60 registered. So if you're watching this, you're going to be there, and this sounds good. Sign up. Although we tend not to turn people away, but don't tell SANS I said that.
Yeah, who said what?
Exactly.
As long as the check clears.
Yes.
Sometimes if it doesn't.
That's it. So which tools and techniques do you recommend people be familiar with before going into this challenge?
Sure. You need to be able to handle Windows event logs, which tends to be actually the weakest part because a lot of folks who come to SANS, they're the pen tester types, even a lot of the defenders, they're heavy Linux. They know Bash
they're
a
not
bit.
Windows admins.
They're not Windows admins, exactly.
I haven't been a Windows admin since like Windows NT4.
And the Windows admins that come in tend to want to use Event Viewer to look at the event logs, which is a terrible way to look at event logs. My favorite way of looking at event logs is PowerShell. And PowerShell, well, I actually like Python too, but you got to port them over there first. But PowerShell is a wonderful, way to look at event logs, get WinEvent. And I wrote a tool actually called Deep Blue CLI, which I talked about at DerbyCon last year, which is a PowerShell framework for finding this stuff. So I would actually use that. Free hint for the Policy Security Weekly folks. Bring Deep Blue CLI with you because it'll solve a bunch of this stuff.
That's awesome.
And so PowerShell, so Windows, we have Windows admins, but Windows admins handy with PowerShell down to using get WinEvent, carving up, because ultimately the event logs are XML. And using get WinEvent to slice through them. Very few natively off the street know that. Once in a while we have someone. And beyond that, of course, packets. So any kind of PCAP tool, whether it's Wireshark, T-Speed up, even down to strings. With a giant 150 meg PCAP, I'll start with strings. Just look for something. If I know the name of a site, we have a site called whites.us that is featured in the game, wights.us. I would just run strings and grep, at least find out what file that thing's in. Okay, and it's on January 3rd, it's in that one.
It's amazing how the old school Linux tools are still to this day so fast.
They
very
scale.
fast.
I make the joke when I teach the wireless class that I use my 3 favorite uber-elite hacking tools include VI, strings, and Excel.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And
Emacs, Larry. If you'd said Emacs,
oh, don't start. Don't start.
Well, you could use
VI all day long.
Use sed
So Joff, Mr. Recently Certified SANS Instructor, it is no longer going to be Python for pen testing. It's going to be Perl for pen testing. Have fun.
That's it. I'm out.
What was I looking at the other day? Was it Nikto? Nikto is still written in Perl.
Yeah, I believe it.
And it was updated like the GitHub repo, the Git repo was updated like a couple months ago.
Lies. They wrote it from scratch again. It didn't get updated.
Look,
They wrote it from scratch again in Perl.
Right.
Apparently.
Because you can't read Perl.
It does the exact same thing. It's just the code's completely different.
Yeah.
Look, no, Perl is like IRC. You can tear it from my cold, dead hands.
Yes. I'm an old Perl guy. If you're slicing up text, Perl's the way. But if you're doing socket stuff, it's got to be Python.
That's some sound advice.
Fair enough.
And beyond that, command line stuff, because they get these giant log files, Apache log files, the usual grep and stuff like that to carve through that stuff.
I can grep for 404s with the best of them.
There you go. Well, you're in. You'll get at least 100 points. You get to level 2, I'm pretty sure.
Yay, leveled up.
If you take hints.
If you take hints. That's awesome.
Yep.
And it's surprising how many problems those simple tools like that can solve.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The first time I ever went and did Red Net Wars, Ed's side, there were a bunch of questions I had no idea how to answer.
Right.
check this Firefox database for this item. I'm like,
Strings.
I don't know how to use SQLite 3, but I know how to use strings.
Right.
And sure enough.
Yeah, I was looking at the new 503 challenge. Judy Novak and Dave Holzer built a new NetWars field challenge for day 6 of 503, which is the packet analysis class. And they asked me to look at it before it launched, so I got to play a NetWars that I didn't build with fresh set of eyes and go through it. Actually, a blue team NetWars, which I've never played a blue team challenge that I didn't actually build myself. And one of the challenges, I don't want to spoil it, but they're hiding messages. It's like Stego and DNS kind of a thing. Lots of ways to do that. But what I did was I ran TCP dump, and I'm running TCP dump, and I figure if it's like a message encoded in TCP and one per packet in like the evil bit or something, some field on the offset for fragmentation is like a D and an A or something. So I ran TCP dump and I see these letters coming down. Then I looked at the offset. Oh, that's at 0 times 0120, and I grep for that. So I literally TCP dump to screen text, and then I grep for the offset with that, and there's the text right down the line, which I'm sure they didn't design the challenge that way. That was the fastest way for me to get to that answer.
I learned how to use TCP dump from Judy. So
she knows more about packets than anyone else on this planet. Yeah, so
pretty much.
There is more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah,
as the saying goes.
And it's not style points; it's really speed. Whatever gets you there the fastest.
And that's what it's like in the real world.
Exactly, because
right?
it's a race against time, whether it's a pen test or whatever.
When your managers or whoever are demanding results,
right?
Or when there's been an incident, we want to know what happened.
Right.
We need a root cause to be able to fix it.
As long as you're not violating any laws, however you derive the answer is fine. Right. As long as you don't have someone like locked in your basement or something, you get information out of them.
And then even then.
What is one thing that one of the students or players in the game has done that like totally surprised you that you never would have thought of in the game that you can describe without giving anything away?
I've just seen people. It's funny how you approach, challenges. I saw one. It wasn't in this challenge. It was in a different challenge, but someone opened up like a 100 meg PCAP and with Wireshark and went frame 1, frame 2, frame 3.
Wow.
I had to go like, listen.
You might want to automate this.
Yeah, and one of the things what's nice about the VM we built, we stole this idea from John Strand, is he built a wiki in his offensive countermeasures class. And so his labs are in wiki format. And so when you have a lab come up, instead of a paper book, you can actually pull up this wiki and it shows, you can actually copy paste syntax. There's a walkthrough at the end saying type this command, type that command, type that command. And if it's in a book, you're typing this, in our case, PowerShell command that's, it wraps twice across the line.
Yep.
And I'm like, a wiki.
All it takes is one.
Yep.
Yeah, one typo.
You're going to mess it up.
One typo,
twice.
Exactly. And a lot people don't realize, tab complete works in PowerShell, but of course it works differently than Bash because it ignores ambiguity. It'll tab out past the point of being ambiguous. And unlike Bash, PowerShell, you can actually tab out most options to these commands. And so we're pulling them at the wiki. And so we stole that idea from John. We're like, John, we love this idea. Can we steal it? Do you mind? He said, sure. So we put the wiki in 5.11, the continuous monitoring class. And when Cyber Defense NetWars dropped, the VM already had the wiki in it. So how to use TCP dump, how to use PowerShell, how to pull Windows event logs via PowerShell. All that stuff's in the wiki. And they can literally just start copying and pasting.
That's awesome.
And so newbie students who come in, we want them to walk away being excited about Blue Team and being successful, getting some stuff done, learning some stuff that maybe they can take back to work, and so sometimes they need that nudge because not many classes have that. John's did and ours did, and that was it initially. And we give them that nudge, we'll show them that, and then they get pretty self-sufficient. And with the hints, they're off and running.
You know what I found along those lines, which I think is fantastic, is the folks that work for me. I teach them all Linux. At least I try. We're going to actually set up some more formal training.
Sure.
Because you need to know Linux to work here. Basically,
sure, of course.
A lot of the infrastructure is built on Linux, and they need that for their job. Not only that, the stuff they're doing, while it may be audiovisual work, I've certainly said, well, I just run this Linux command to get those MP3s merged. You can just do that in one command. I bring it into an edit. I'm like, no. Just run. Oh, wow.
Right.
What a lot of people don't realize that haven't benefited from largely those of us here on the show, hosting the show, 15 plus years of experience using Linux and Unix or more, that the syntax that you were referring to, how specific that is. And I feel like I was telling someone else, I feel like those that were really good at Windows applications and you've got other talents of using software and general skills, if you don't have specific experience with Linux, you don't have that concept of how everything in your command matters.
Yeah.
Spaces, single
Yeah.
quotes, double quotes. So what I did, I drew an exercise.
Capitalization.
Yeah.
I think it's still on the board in there. You can
It is.
Go look. Yeah. So I drew like 15 different ways
Yeah.
in which you could execute a command
Right.
and get the same result.
Sure.
And I told them some of these commands don't have the same result, but most of them do.
Right.
And you got to tell me which ones
Sure.
are which. And even though a lot of them haven't completed the challenge yet, what they got from it just approaching the challenge is, oh, that's because it's a single quote, not a double quote.
Right.
And so now they're cognizant of it and they're working on the details of some of the
How do you write
challenges.
smart
You know-
quotes on a whiteboard?
Yeah.
Fuckers.
You know, Paul, I got to make a comment on that. When you start porting that knowledge over to Windows, where it breaks, especially in the PowerShell world, is anybody who's grown up on Unix, which I certainly did, doesn't realize that a PowerShell pipes objects.
That's
not
hurt my brain.
strings.
That still hurts my brain.
And it's like,
That's the hardest thing to get
And the
past.
first time I encountered that, I'm like, it pipes objects?
Yeah.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Yeah.
I just have two words for the difference in this type of characters in Linux and Windows. Fucking Unicode. Damn it. God, that's such a apostrophe single.
Smart quote.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually figured out on the Mac how to turn fucking smart text off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Well,
other
it's
day.
because I think a lot of the things that we're running into, and I still have to research in Python how to do this on a character by character basis, is the apostrophe. Like when you do an apostrophe in Linux, it's a single quote, right? But in Unicode, they're two separate things. The Unicode character for an apostrophe is not the same. It's no ASCII
Right.
equivalent
Right.
of that. So when you're taking data between Windows and, it bites us every. So what that boils down to is the Python application that we have isn't smart enough yet to know I copied and pasted from a Windows Word document.
Right.
And that's the Unicode representation of
Right.
an apostrophe.
Smart quotes. Yay.
Yeah, to your point, I talk about like having these skills as kind of a secret superpower. And I'll tell you a quick story about my son and my dog, actually. So our dog, Billy, lived a long, happy life and passed away, as dogs do. And it was the first time in my kid's life something like that
Sorry
happened.
to hear that. Yeah, that's
And but that happens, dogs, and it's part of our life. And my son, also named Eric, wanted to recover. He had his screen lock phone on his iPhone was Billy, the picture of Billy. And I was traveling, of course, and I come home and I see him at my wife's computer, kind of upset. It's a Mac. And what he's done, he's trying to recover that picture because that's the only high-resolution picture he has. He's lost the original. It's a screen lock. And so he's a pretty tech-savvy kid. So he backed up the phone to the Mac, and he's going to the files. But when he backed up the files, all the extensions are stripped out. So it's just like these hash names with no extensions. So when you go in to browse through, there's no little summary picture. There's no little icon. It's just they're shown as flat files. So he's manually renaming. There's like 5,000 files, one by one, .jpeg, whatever. And he's getting upset because it's in there somewhere, and it's going to take him a week, and he's going to do it because he wants that picture. Then I get home and I see this. I'm like, hold on. So I sit down and I show him it's a Mac, so it's basically Unix and user land.
Yep.
And I write a recursive find. Just one big long bash, find, blah, blah, blah. Kick off the file command. If file says JPEG, rename JPEG. If file says GIF, rename GIF. And it takes me 3 minutes because it's my background, my first job, 1991 Unix admin. In 3 minutes, it just renames all the files, adds the extension, and now you can browse in and see the summary mode. There's Billy, click.
Right.
And so it would have taken him days or a week.
It's a
Took
great
us
example.
5 minutes.
Great example.
And it's a secret superpower. It's like an overlay onto reality and allows you to do things that it move at lightning speed and do things you couldn't otherwise do.
And I will say that, I've been doing Unix Linux for a decent amount of time. I think I touched my first Linux box when it was Slackware, installing it from floppies when it first came out.
Yeah,
very
Red Hat,
first.
Red Hat 5.2 from floppies for me.
Yeah, I did Slackware before Red Hat.
Nice.
So I've been doing it a long time, and I wouldn't claim to be an expert at any given point, and certainly not when my 19-year-old intern schools me on a weekly basis. Seriously.
Nice.
And now it's just like, I ask him questions. Like he said, oh, well, we should really, compress this file, and we can do it in this fashion. And I even forget which algorithm he's going to be screaming at me now. And he says, oh, if you throw the -J with the tar command, it will do it with this compression algorithm. But you may also want to specify the number of cores that you want to use because it takes a really long time to compress. In fact,
Because back in the day, there was a processor.
Right.
That was all you had to work with.
Yeah.
We had no command line switches to tell us how many cores, because there was only only one.
Yeah, he says the extraction will be really fast, but if you give it a -9 to do the fastest, the most compression, you might want to add 4 cores to your virtual machine because it will use all 4 cores. Decompression will only use 1 core, but it will be really fast, even though you compressed it with the most compression. And I ran it, and I'm like, yeah, I probably should have given this more cores because it took 18 hours. It literally took 18 hours to compress like a 4 gig file.
Wow. So, I would never, I don't think I could operate in the world without the background that I have. I grew up, first UNIX I installed was, I think it was Xenix back in the day when they first came out for the PC, but I grew up on Sun Solaris in my early sysadmin days, and that kind of experience is just fantastic to have.
That's what SunOS, the original BSD True SunOS, 1993, our server got hacked. And I handled a first-generation rootkit. I'd already got bought into the internet in 91 and Unix system, and we got hacked in 93, first-generation rootkit on the BSD-style SunOS 413. And I'm like, career equals decided. This is it. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. So
I mean, I remember the very first time I ran into the simple flaw where the RM command didn't understand that if you created a file that had ... space in it, that it shouldn't traverse up the directory tree. So, you had Unix sysadmins writing cron tabs to clean stuff up and do rm-rf whatever. And you had lonely old users out there going, I'm going to get them, and creating ... space files. And, I came into work
old
today.
School.
Old school. My whole user file system is missing.
Whoops.
So,
who among us hasn't done that?
Good times.
One to grow on.
I cut my teeth on some of the Unix stuff. Professionally was definitely Solaris. SunOS was running managing DNS on a pair of Solaris Spark 5s.
Nice.
And
when I worked at the university, that was before that I had done Solaris 6. Right, in the early 2000s, it was 6. And when I got to university, the other DNS server was Solaris.
Yep.
Maybe there was some SunOS kicking around when I was at university too.
Yep.
Older stuff.
My first week there, they didn't have a cubicle for me, so I had to share what was entitled an office. It used to be the supply closet that they took all the supplies out of, and I had to share that with another person. And
Milton, was his name Milton?
Pretty close. I literally had a desk the size of the countertop bar, but half the length. And on that was a 15-inch monitor for my Windows PC and a 17-inch Sun monitor.
Those monitors were awesome.
But the problem is
they shaved some years off of our lives, I think, with the radiation you got.
But the monitor was actually deeper than the desk was.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, the monitor was like right up to your nose, right? Because it was so gigantic.
And what do you think happened to your hair?
It's still there, sort of.
It's still. That's why we're all bald. Well, Eric somehow has a radiation shield on or something.
I'm starting to lose it, but it's all the radiation from the monitors. Yeah, it's still good. Most of it.
Yeah. So you also want to talk about how to become a SANS instructor.
Sure.
Well, as fun as it is reminiscing about our old school.
Sure. Well, absolutely.
We could do that probably much longer at a bar
at
the wee hours of the morning.
So how to be a SANS instructor is a talk I've been giving for a while. John Strand gave it first. And then
he passed the torch to you.
He passed the torch.
And this is a talk I'd love. That I'm actually really interested to hear this because I get this from my students a lot. And quite honestly, my experience is a little bit out of date because things have changed.
Right, and for me too. But and so it's really it's 3 things really. It's how to get more involved with SANS professionally, meaning where they cut you a check. And mentor is a good way to start that. So it's mentor stuff. It's really taken on public speaking because public speaking is a huge fear. A lot of people want to do it, but are afraid to do it. There's imposter syndrome. People are afraid, someone in the room knows more than I will, and they don't want to get up there. And so all that, and I deal with all that and more, believe me. And then, how to actually be an instructor if you want to get to the point where Larry's got and where Joff literally got today. Congratulations again, Joff, because I know what goes into that. And, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, so I have some idea of what you went through. And so it's the 3 things. How to get more involved with SANS, beginning as mentor, public speaking when you have no background. I had 0.0% background in public speaking. I had none. In fact, I was just talking recently to someone about public speaking. I said, in high school, if my guidance counselor had prepared a list of 100 jobs you could have, and asked me to rank them from 1 to 100. The last one I would have picked was public speaking. My guidance counselor, the last one, he would have picked for me was public speaking. My parents, the last one, because I had terrible shyness and I had a speech impediment when I was a kid, and all those things stacked up against me. And I talk to people, and when they're in that class, that's what they're most intimidated about, is getting in front of a crowd of people. It's an intimidating thing. And so that's the 3 parts. So I tell them I did it. I did it walking the SANS with nothing. And it's obviously a hard work, preparation, and experience. I've been teaching for SANS for over 10 years.
Yeah, picturing everyone in their underwear only gets you so far.
Exactly. And so it's really those 3 things. And so a lot of people come to that talk, and we're happy to talk about tonight. And for me, it led to being, a senior instructor. But it actually can branch out various ways once you get involved in the pipeline.
I think the other thing is, being the newly minted guy here, a lot of it is getting over the sort of fear of the unknown. I mean, you've got to be honest with yourself. Yeah. There's nobody on this planet that knows everything. Right.
Exactly.
You have a set of skills, and you're there to present those set of skills. It's about being honest with yourself and being honest with your audience at the time. And once you sort of get over that barrier, then things become a lot easier.
Well, and one of the things that I've realized over the years and become a lot more comfortable with is, even when you're presenting to a smaller crowd, there's always at least one person, probably more, that knows more than you about a particular subject.
Right.
You have to be comfortable with that before you even step onto the stage and know that other people are going to know stuff that you don't.
Absolutely.
And that's a hard thing to overcome.
Yep.
For a lot of people. But you have to embrace that.
Stephen Northcutt told me something years ago. He's one of the leaders of SANS, and he said, Eric, people walk into that room liking you. They walk into that room like they saw that night talk or that DerbyCon or that stable talk, whatever it is. They saw the title, they saw your name, and they're there. So they're actually on your side. You have to pretty much actively lose them. And they're way more forgiving than you think. Like, one of the things I recommend if you want to get involved with public speaking, and I'll warn you it's painful, is record yourself. Sit in front of your webcam and turn it on and just give your talk to yourself and then play it. And I'm going to warn you, when you play it, it's going to be horrifying because you're going to hear every and every and all the things. But you need to. I did that when I was a mentor. I'd turn on the webcam, go, and I'd watch. I'm like, I'm like, okay, round 2, round 3. Yeah. But what you're hearing, other people don't hear.
Episode 519.
Exactly.
And you know what? That's really valuable because now that I think about it, because I used to listen to every one of our shows when we released it.
We would either edit it or we would listen. I mean, I haven't listened to all 519.
Sure.
I stopped, but quite a few.
Yeah, I stopped listening somewhere around episode 120, 200, somewhere in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because there wasn't enough hours in the day, and I thought about it. I'm like, why do I need to listen to it again? I was there.
Right. That's why I said the same thing. But I do go back every once in a while and listen to for just that reason.
Yep, and he's right. You have to actively lose them. So, and they're on your side in the ums and ahs. I mean, as long as it's not overwhelming, they generally don't even hear it. Like, one of the things I actually studied, because I didn't know anything about public speaking, so I actually bought books on it, and I read about it.
Well, I think that in and of itself, Eric, is great advice.
Right. No,
it's something you have to study.
And one of the things, and when people are talking, when you say what it actually means is I'm going to pause for a second, but I'm not done yet. So hold on. So the signifies the other person, I'm not done talking yet. And if you don't say the there's an actual pause, the other person jumps in. And the problem is that's designed for conversation, and it depends on how you teach. Some people teach or speak this way. My name is Eric Conrad, and I'm going to teach. They kind of orate that way.
Yes.
I find that very unnatural. Now, as Larry Wall once said, there's more than one way to do it, just like your whiteboard of 12 ways to do the command. I find that kind of oration, like, I'm speaking to you now on UNIX security. I find that very stilted, but I've seen people do it, and it's very successful. My style is more conversational, where just like I'm talking to you guys now, and I have a conversational style where I'm telling stories, a story about my son. I've told that story when we talk about programming in class, because that's the way I teach. I teach in a much more personal manner. The risk of that, though, if you don't do the oration style, you do the conversation style, is you have the ums and the ahs. Yeah. And I still have those things, but once I understood why they were there, and as a result of that, the reason they're there, people don't hear it, because it's the same cue. Because in the class, it feels like a conversation, even though it's one way. So when I'm saying and ah, we've all been tuned to say, okay, he's just pausing for a second, he's going to keep going. So you'll notice that way more than other people will,
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really, really good comment, Eric. And the other thing that I would add in is the process while you're becoming a SANS instructor of actually doing the I just said right?
There you go.
That's actually the third time you said it. But because I was listening.
Where's my feedback form? No, I'm kidding.
But actually sitting in a room in front of other instructors with Dave Holzer, usually hosts this or has some history, and sits down and does very active feedback without being overly critical. That is an incredibly valuable process to go through, because you learn so much about yourself and the way you present, and it's a self-reflective process to improve it. And yeah, it takes work. It takes a lot of work, but
a lot of hard work.
Worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was it just last week? It was just last week. I was at the first conference teaching a workshop on effective communication skills, and a lot of what we're talking about is stuff that I cover in my workshop. I failed ultimately because they gave me 90 minutes, and I'm either used to giving this as a talk or as a 4-hour workshop. And they were using the 24-hour clock, and I got mixed up, and I basically ran out of time, and I wasn't done yet. So I'm like, I'm a failure because I'm teaching a talk on effective communication. I couldn't even get through all of my material. But somebody walked up to me afterwards and said, and I had to look up this word in the dictionary, says, wow, your talk was really prescient, in my opinion. And for those that don't know what it means, because I didn't, it has something to do with very timely and almost prophetic. It's like spot on. And but one of the things I asked, because I was trying to in my communication workshop, I want the people to talk. I don't want to just lecture on how to communicate. And I was asking them to think about we were Thursday, fourth day into the conference, and I asked them to think about some of the best talks that they'd heard during the week, and talk about what was it that made it good, and of course content had something to do with it, but far and away the consistent message was the people were acting like they were just talking. They were engaging the audience because they weren't just lecturing, reading from a script. There's actually 4 speaking styles, and reading from a script is called manuscript. And everybody consistently says, oh yeah, that's horrible. That's the hardest way, or that's the least engaging, entertaining form of lecture, or form of public speaking. But far and away, what's popular is when people are acting like it's just a conversation. No matter how canned and memorized it is, at least if they're looking up from a script and engaging the audience, making eye contact, those are all the little things that make it more memorable. And in my opinion, more memorable means the audience, the class, if you will, is going to be more likely to take away the stuff that you want them to take away from the course.
Right.
I would make one more comment. The other thing that I had to learn that was significantly challenging is the skill to go through some sort of dialogue, explain something in one certain way, and then sort of watch the audience for their reaction. And if you see one or two that get that quizzical look like they didn't quite get it, then to back up and re-explain the exact same concept in a completely different way. And that is a real trick to do. I mean, it takes some significant conscious effort to sort of almost get out of your comfort zone and be in their shoes and be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and Geoff mentioned, so if you come in to be a SANS instructor, when I came in, we kind of clawed our way in the wild. In the wild, they threw us to the wolves and see if we got out. There was no training that Geoff had. And when people see what I went through to get in through SANS, I kind of clawed my way through. But now SANS has built this whole pipeline of Dave Holzer has a few hours usually during a big conference. And other instructors will come in. We have the murder boards, which are actually very, very controversial. I know Geoff and I'm sure Larry went through that. But we have all this training now, and all this, we're SANS instructors. If you get to a certain point, we're always on your side, but as you kind of rise through the ranks, just to tell you what the ranks are. For SANS, you walk in as a SANS student. And then if you pass a GX cert, you're now GX certified. And if you get a good enough grade, I think it's 85, you're invited to become a mentor. And most people, I think, probably blow that email off, but I got that email a long time ago, and I'm very glad I answered it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here. And then mentor is where you kind of sit around the table. It's like 18 hours peer-led discussion. A full SANS class is double that, 36 hours, most classes. And the mentor relationship is different than the instructor relationship, because the mentor relationship is you're sitting around the table, hey, I've been through this, I'm going to bring you through this. You can't teach it in 18 hours if it's a 36-hour course. So you assign homework, and they come in the next week. And I did 2 hours a night for 9 weeks. I used to work in Boston at a hospital. I was the manager of networking and security engineering, as well as, unfortunately, the HIPAA security officer simultaneously. I run my own company for 9 years now, but back then, that's what I did. And conference room was empty at night, so they comped us a free slot if we gave a conference room. So we had students come in from wherever. And the mentor, it's easier because it's a peer-led thing. You know, students come in. Your keen powers of inference would tell you that some students blew off the homework you assigned, and you kind of manage all that as best you can. And if you get through that, there's community.
And do you get ranked as a mentor?
You get
scored?
You get feedback forms, just like in SANS, 1 through 5, the whole 9 yards. And SANS is crazy about feedback and quality, not feedback, quality, as Geoff and Larry can attest to. And then community is the same format. You're in the room, you're up in front of the room, but it's smaller cities like St. Louis and maybe Pittsburgh that don't get the big show. If you do well there based on the quality, meaning one way they get that, of course, the feedback forms is trial, which Geoff just conducted his today, actually, completed his today. And trial is the tryout, meaning they're trying you out for the major leagues. Major leagues being certified. Certified, Larry's there, Geoff's there, I'm there. And then beyond that, there's principal, senior, and finally fellow. And I've made it up to senior. And again, through that process, once you come in, if you're interested, some people do mentor and they want to do that. They have a day job because it's hard if you're teaching 10 weeks a year. I'm not sure how much you teach, Larry or Geoff. But if it's,
Yeah, at some point you have to find a job that's going to accommodate your teaching.
Exactly.
Yep.
Find either a very understanding employer, which I had initially, like 6 weeks a year I could kind of push. Beyond that, it was too much. Mm-hmm. And I got to the decision that many of us do. Now, some people have a great employer who are like, yeah, because it brings prestige to the company having, SANS, because we're very visible people, obviously. And, SANS, most infosec people on the planet have been reached by the SANS marketing octopus. I've envisioned these arms reaching around the world and just grabbing infosec people.
Well, that's true. If you're teaching 6 weeks a year, even before you get to certified, you're still in front of how many different students in a year?
And the networking...
hundreds at least, maybe over 1,000.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And the networking is insane, and if you've been around a while, I mean, I was 20, in my 20s, I didn't see this, but networking is the key to success in this career. The old what you know versus how you know, it's actually both. You need to really, really do both. And if all you do is the what you know, now maybe you get so awesome at some point, you become like H.D. Moore and you transcend all this. You just kind of become so awesome it doesn't matter anymore. He networks plenty too. For me, what you know and who you know, building that human network. As you progress more in this career, it's easy to get dead-ended because you're making too much money for this job. My last company I talked about, I loved it there, but I was stuck. There was no place further for me to go as a technical person. I was told to get the promotion to director. I had to put on a suit, stop touching technology entirely, basically fill out TPS reports all day long, and who wants to do that? Well, someone does, but not me, right? I don't want to do that. And so if you want to stay purely technical, now some companies like Google and IBM, they have these technical excellence and fellow tracks, but most companies don't have that.
Cisco too.
Yeah, Cisco too, but my company did.
Distinguished engineer.
They go distinguished, exactly, fellow, whatever you want to call it. And so as you get further in, if you want to stay, as I did, technical, like the most management I've ever wanted to do was head up a team. Like technical team, I love that stuff. Give me a team, some young kids, mix. I'm all about that. But putting on a suit and reports, no, I don't want to do that. That's someone else does. I'm not good at that. It's not what my passion is. And so one of the things about SANS is, so I teach maybe 12, 13 weeks a year. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and you figure out the hours involved with that and the thousands of people I've met by that and the connections you start making. So there's a lot of ways to network, obviously, but SANS, for me, offers an avenue that I probably wouldn't have found on my own. I'm personally very introverted. I tell people all the time, if I'm at a cocktail party with doctors and lawyers, I'm useless. I just shut down, I get quiet. And one of the hilarious things, if you're I'm a big dude. If you're a big dude at a cocktail party and you're standing in the corner not saying anything, you become like threatening and ominous. Like, who's that big dude not saying anything? And so I'm just trying to hang out and just be chill. And so doctors, lawyers, I'm useless. I'm just useless. But among nerds, these are my friends, that we get excited about Unix command line stuff and Sparks and whatever, I'm the version of me my friends see. So in class, and that's the other thing, a lot of people coming into SANS on instructor side, a lot of geeks are introverts, and they see someone like John Strand practically bouncing off the walls. And we talk about kind of the emotive scale of SANS instructors, where John Strand's, if you draw a bell curve of how emotive you are, how much you push yourself out there, John Strand's over here on the right side of that bell curve. I'm somewhere towards that, not on the John level, but I'm actually pretty emotive. And then you got other people like James Tarala, who's an awesome instructor. I saw him teach 617 years ago, the wireless class, and he was just total ninja knowing his stuff, but not like John Strand. And there's all kinds of different ways to do it, but he just commanded the room, knew his stuff, total command presence, and owning that room, command presence is really key. Because one of the things people worry about is what if someone starts talking, and what if someone challenges my authority? They know something I don't know. I say something wrong. They'll call me out on it. I remember fearing all these things. And when I first started, I had more of that happening, and I realized I wasn't owning the room enough. I wasn't just pushing myself, whether you're motive or not. And so I wasn't pushing myself out there. And the more command presence you have, the less that will happen, because they're really just testing you usually to see who's in charge. Some A-type personalities need to know who the boss is. And once you show them who the boss is, they usually are perfectly fine. And so having that command presence and being out there,
and knowing what to say in response.
What to say in response.
Because there's a number of different responses, right? Because sometimes you have to go down the technical route.
Right.
Maybe sometimes you have to go the social route. But sometimes I feel like, and I don't know if this is a tactic or not, but I use it sometimes.
Sure.
You just have to make a joke.
Yeah.
Without insulting them.
Right.
But just turn it into a joke.
Yep.
And then I think they realize you have a sense of humor and you're a real person. And they're like, all right, I'm just going to kick back and listen for the most part now.
Absolutely. But just back to my point. And so the introverts see us doing that, and they think, wow, I'm introverted. I couldn't possibly be that out there. And again, there's a range of emotions or emotive teaching styles. But for the introverts who come to my How to Be a SANS Instructor talk, I tell them that I am an introvert myself, but I ask them, how do you act among your friends? Like your best friends, when there's no strangers in the room, it's just you and your buddies, your pals. How do you act? Because if you're a nerd, you're among friends. And that, for me, was what really unlocked it.
Yeah.
I act my true self. I'm acting much more naturally now than I was at the party we're at on where I live. It was just kind of stuffy, and I was just hiding in the corner.
Doctors and lawyers, right?
Doctors and lawyers.
I struggle with that too, right? Because you spend all day learning Docker and containers.
Right.
And you get into that environment and that's what I want to talk about. And I'm like, no, nobody here knows what a container is.
I'm so excited.
Put your leftovers in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I am just so excited to hear Eric say that, because I'm probably not quite as introverted as it sounds like Eric is, but that is the key. When you go in there and you just say, hey, I'm amongst friends.
Yeah.
And it becomes a conversation amongst friends. You still got to take control of the room. You still got to be that guy who owns that room. But once it's a conversation amongst friends and you start that rapport going, it's usually that first day in a SANS class.
Yeah.
Once you get over that first day and you learn the personalities, it's all golden from there, provided you've got everybody in the right categories as you're teaching that day.
Excellent. Okay, with that, you've answered the 5 questions before.
I have not.
Okay. 3 words to describe yourself.
Giant infosec nerd.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Sarcasm.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
First every time.
Care to demonstrate?
I was waiting for someone to ask. It was embarrassing there for a minute. The room got quiet.
2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise?
Grace Hopper. I know she has a lot of kids, apparently.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And Andre the Giant. There you go.
Wow.
Nice.
That would make an interesting kid.
Yeah.
You've thought about
that would
these.
make Eric.
You've thought about these questions before, haven't you?
Some of them, not all. But Grace Hopper was automatic.
Yeah.
And Andre the Giant, I read about his life.
Did you bring your nanosecond with you by chance?
I did not bring the nanosecond. There's a famous picture of Andre the Giant holding a beer, and the beer looks like a nip, it's the size of a thimble. And
It looks like a shot glass.
If you read about his life, it's interesting because most people who are 7.5 feet tall and weigh 500 pounds, they kind of mold their lives around them. Like they buy a car that's twice as big, they build a bed. He was flying like coach to Japan, and he was going to Japanese. He was traveling like we do, but he was it's an interesting kind of poignant, sad life. So, Andre the Giant, read about that.
Excellent. Eric, thank you very much. With that, we're going to take a short break. Come
Anytime.
back with our technical segment for this evening. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.